Jasmine Carter had always taken pride in her work. As the overnight manager at a Walmart on Route 19, she was the quiet guardian of the store, ensuring everything ran smoothly while the world slept. Every shift was a careful balance of routine tasks and small comforts, a cup of lukewarm coffee, the hum of the freezers, and the flickering fluorescent lights that made the aisles feel almost familiar. But beneath that familiarity lay the weight of responsibility. And for Jasmine, every night was also a promise to provide for her daughter, Ella. The long hours were a sacrifice, and nothing could make her more determined to keep her little world safe. That was until he appeared. It was just after 2 o'clock in the morning, one chilly autumn night. Jasmine was double-checking the security cameras when she noticed a figure lingering near the pet Isley, a man in a faded maintenance hoodie, his presence as quiet and deliberate as a shadow. At first, she thought it was one of the regular shift anomalies, perhaps a customer who had missed the closing time. But as he moved slowly between the aisles, his eyes darting upward as if searching for something, a nagging unease took hold of her. When Jasmine approached him, the man introduced himself as Eric Dalton. His story was as unremarkable as it was unsettling. One moment he claimed he'd left his wallet in the store, the next that he was picking up something for his wife. His calm demeanor and oddly measured responses struck Jasmine as insincere. But what unsettled her most was the way he left, a soft smile playing on his lips as he murmured, "You'll see me again," before disappearing into the dimly lit corridors of the store. In the days that followed, Jasmine found herself revisiting the security footage, her anxious eyes catching every detail. And there, like a ghost repeating its ritual, was Ericor, so he called himself. Night after night, between 1:45 and 2:15 in the morning, he appeared in a different part of the store. But one detail was always the same. In each clip, he would casually flip a single cereal box upside down. It wasn't an act of vandalism, nor was it the eccentricity of a harmless oddity. It was a deliberate, unsettling signature, a silent message that only she seemed to understand. Driven by a mix of professional duty and personal fear, Jasmine began to investigate. In the quiet after her shift, while the rest of the world slumbered, she pored over the footage. With every replay, her suspicion grew. This wasn't an isolated incident, it was a pattern. And it wasn't just the flipped cereal box. It was the way he moved, the precise calm in his eyes, and the eerie consistency of his visits. One night, as she slowed the footage, Jasmine caught a glimpse of something even more disturbing, a fleeting reflection in a darkened window behind the break room. Not his reflection, but another pair of eyes watching him, silently. Her unease deepened. Whispers of a long-forgotten urban legend, a case of a night manager in Arkansas who vanished after reporting a similar figure, began to surface in hushed conversations with a poor's trusted co-worker, a red herring who initially raised more questions than answers. The suggestion that these incidents might be part of a larger, unspoken network of breaches sent chills down her spine. Determined to bring the truth to light, Jasmine compiled all the evidence and handed it over to corporate security. What they discovered shocked everyone. The man known as Eric Dalton was not who he claimed to be. His real name was Thomas Everly, a former Walmart contractor fired 6 months earlier for violating strict security protocols. Somehow, he had kept his old badge, and his access was still active, slipping through the cracks of a system that should have known better. The investigation didn't end there. A routine sweep of the back corridors revealed a hidden burner phone tucked behind a ceiling tile above the women's restroom. The phone was wiped clean of any data, save for one chilling detail. The only number saved in its contacts was labeled simply "Supervisor." Even more horrifying, hidden inside the phone's casing was a small, folded photograph. It was a grainy image of Jasmine, taken from an angle that made her feel as though she had been watching herself. The date on the photo preceded the first time she'd seen him on camera. It was then that Jasmine realized this wasn't just an intrusion into her workplace, it was a personal invasion. In the aftermath, the store overhauled its security systems, and the broken sensors and disconnected cameras were finally fixed. But Jasmine, haunted by the feeling of being watched and the nagging question of how close danger could come unnoticed, made a decision. 2 weeks after the investigation, she resigned. The relentless nights had taken their toll, and she needed to reclaim a sense of safety for herself and for Ella. Yet the nightmare refused to end. Last Tuesday, while on a rare break from her new life, Jasmine stopped at a quiet gas station in a town 2 hours away. It was nearly midnight, and as she stepped into the small convenience store to pick up a snack, her breath caught in her throat. There, in a shadowy corner, stood a man in the same faded hoodie, his face obscured but unmistakable in his calm demeanor. He didn't speak. He didn't approach her. He simply stood there, his presence as haunting as ever, a silent reminder of everything that had transpired. Heart-pounding. Jasmine left without a word, the memory of his soft, chilling promise echoing in her mind. When she returned home and opened her pantry later that night, she froze. On the shelf, among her usual snacks, was one cereal box upside down, just as it had always been left behind in the store. For Jasmine, the horror of that night was clear. This was not the work of an isolated trespasser, but the work of someone who had meticulously woven himself into the fabric of her life, a phantom who promised to return, time and again. And, with every glance over her shoulder, every uneasy pause in the dark, she was reminded that true safety is an illusion, a fleeting myth, that even in the most familiar places, danger lurks, waiting to be seen. In the end, Jasmine's story became a whispered warning to all who work in the shadows of the night. Sometimes, the greatest threat is not what you can see, but what you believe might be watching you in the silence. He didn't want the laptop, he wanted revenge, and Black Friday gave him the perfect excuse to explode. It began at 5:22 in the morning, 2 hours before the store even opened, when Marcus Reed joined the long, jittery line outside TechCore Electronics. Marcus wasn't drawn by the chaos of discounts. He was on a mission. A resourceful tech enthusiast, he had mapped out every inch of the store, memorized the layout, and even pinpointed the exact aisle where the Maxion X17 laptop deal, so extraordinary it bordered on a miracle, would be found. While others battled for electronics and appliances, Marcus slipped through the crowd with calculated precision. At exactly 7 o'clock, as the doors burst open, he maneuvered through the throng and snatched one of the last 2 Maxion laptops off the shelf. Then, a voice shattered the brief calm. "You don't deserve that." Turning, Marcus locked eyes with a disheveled man whose rage burned beneath a weathered exterior. This was Derek Mills. With wild eyes and a trembling fist, Derek's presence exuded a raw, volatile desperation. He claimed he had been in line long before Marcus arrived, that he had waited all year for that deal. But his words, laced with bitterness, hinted at something far more personal than a simple consumer grievance. Derek's story, when later pieced together by investigators, revealed a man whose life had unraveled. Once a systems engineer with promise and purpose, a series of brutal setbacks, a layoff, a divorce, and mounting debt had stripped away his stability. The Maxion X17 wasn't just a laptop to him. It was a final lifeline, a chance to claw back some dignity by flipping the device online for a profit. In his desperate eyes, Marcus had robbed him of that one chance. Inside the store, chaos erupted as security intervened and escorted Derek out. But the standoff was far from over. Outside, amid a sea of frosted taillights and shuddering car doors, Derek lurked at the far edge of the lot, watching as Marcus left with his prize tucked under his arm. Then, as if driven by an uncontrollable force, Derek surged forward. The confrontation was swift and during a clash of shouts and scuffling feet. Witnesses described the scene as surreal, a breakdown unfolding in real time as Derek lunged for the laptop bag, his anger echoing off the concrete. By the time the police arrived, responding to frantic calls from startled bystanders, Derek had escalated his standoff. Perched atop the hood of a parked car, he screamed about fairness, corruption, and a lifetime of missed chances. For 37 excruciating minutes, officers attempted to coax him down, their voices barely penetrating the fury of his cries. Then, as abruptly as it began, Derek ceased his outburst. He slowly climbed down, his arms raised in reluctant surrender, leaving behind a trail of unanswered questions. Among the cell phone recordings that captured every tense moment, one detail sent shivers down the spine. During the standoff, Derek had filmed passers-by, especially Marcus. It was as if he was tracking every move, every exit, every heartbeat of the man who had taken his last hope. In the days that followed, while TechCore revamped its security protocols and local media debated retail safety amid consumer frenzy, an eerie twist emerged. Marcus received a message on social media from an unknown account. The message, sent 2 days after the incident, contained just one word: yours. No explanation, no further clues, only a promise that the night's events were part of something bigger and darker. Marcus's own words would later resonate. Sometimes, a deal isn't worth the cost. And for Derek, whose shattered past collided with the madness of Black Friday, the standoff was more than a moment of rage. It was a desperate cry to be seen. As the frenzy subsided and the echoes of that tumultuous morning faded, one detail remained etched in the minds of those who witnessed it. Black Friday wasn't simply about savings or consumer chaos. It was a reminder that behind every deal, every bargain, lies a human story, sometimes filled with hope, sometimes with despair, and sometimes with a danger that lingers long after the crowds have dispersed. In the end, the incident left an indelible mark on all involved. Marcus continued his passion for tech, though he now shunned in-store shopping for good. And Derek? His future remained uncertain, a life scarred by failures and a single, explosive moment of madness. Yeah, for anyone navigating the chaos of a Black Friday sale, this story stands as a chilling warning. When desperation meets opportunity, the result can be as unpredictable as it is unforgettable. It was just past 11:30 p.m. when Evelyn Ross, Walmart's dedicated security supervisor, noticed something that stopped her in her tracks. The store was eerily quiet except for the low hum of refrigeration units and the occasional flicker of fluorescent lights. It was late, the kind of hour when only the truly dedicated worked. The aisles were empty, and only a few employees were finishing their duties, wrapping up for the night. But then, the motion sensors in aisle 17 blinked on. Evelyn had worked late shifts for years. She knew the store like the back of her hand, every sound, every movement, every corner. When she saw the lights flash again, it was impossible to ignore. There was something wrong. She pulled up the surveillance feed, fingers moving quickly over the keyboard. At first, the footage seemed normal, but then, in the stockroom, something was off. A figure appeared. A man, standing alone in the shadows of the stockroom, calmly, as if he belonged there. But Evelyn knew better. He wasn't supposed to be there. No one was. The store had closed an hour ago. The overnight team had already clocked in. No one had reported seeing anyone lingering. Who was he? She zoomed in. His face was partially obscured, but there was no mistaking Ith wasn't an employee. No uniform, no badge. Just a man who, somehow, had made it into one of the most secured parts of the building. Her heart skipped a beat. This wasn't just an intruder. This was something far worse, an unauthorized presence in a place she had worked tirelessly to protect. Her fingers hovered over the phone. No time to waste. She called the assistant manager, James. who arrived with a look of concern. Together, they watched the feed. The man didn't appear to be in any hurry. He walked calmly between the stockroom shelves, almost as if he was waiting for something or someone. "What should we do?" James asked, anxiety creeping into his voice. Evelyn was already on it. She locked the stockroom remotely and called the police. There was no time to hesitate, but when the officers arrived and began scouring the store, the man was nowhere to be found. The stockroom was locked. The alarms hadn't been triggered. It was as if he had simply vanished. The officers checked every exit, every camera. Nothing. Just as they were about to leave, Evelyn noticed something strange. Behind the stack of overstocked Christmas decorations in the back corner of the stockroom, something was out of place. A bundle of blankets, a water bottle half drunk, and then a phone. A cheap burner phone. One that had no contact, except one. A single name, T. That's when Evelyn's stomach dropped. She knew she had to dig deeper. She couldn't shake the feeling that there was more to this than a simple break-in. She pulled up the past month's footage, and there he was, Tom Gardner. The same man again, and again, always moving through the store after hours, never interacting with anyone, always in the background, in the freezer aisle, in the stockroom, near the seasonal aisles, in places where employees rarely ventured. He had been there, living in the store for 19 nights, hidden in plain sight, unnoticed, ignored. Evelyn's pulse raced. How had she not seen it? How had no one? How had he gotten in? But as the investigation unfolded, the chilling truth came to light. Tom Gardner wasn't just any man. He had been a former contract worker at another Walmart location that had seen a string of similar incidents. People had talked about strange disappearances, odd noises in the stockroom, and the sudden loss of small items, but nobody had ever connected the dots. Until now. The worst part? It wasn't even the break-in. It was the thought of how easy it had been. The store's security measures, no matter how many cameras, how many protocols she had, failed to catch someone slipping through the cracks. What was he after? Was he just a homeless man seeking shelter? Or was he stalking something or someone inside the store? The haunting realization hit Evelyn late that night. Tom wasn't just an intruder. He was a ghost. A shadow that had slipped through every system, unnoticed and unchallenged, until she had uncovered his presence. The store quickly changed its security protocols. Doors were locked sooner. Surveillance was heightened. Employees were trained to recognize every danger, every threat. But Evelyn still couldn't shake the image of that cold, empty stockroom. The unsettling quiet. The way the man had moved, so sure of himself, as if he had all the time in the world. And then there was the burner phone, the name T. It was the only lead, but it didn't explain much. Was Tom Gardner part of something bigger, a larger network? Or was he just one man, living on the edge of desperation? Weeks went by, but the unsettling questions remained unanswered. Was it just the story of an intruder? Or was there something darker, something deeper hidden beneath the surface? Evelyn couldn't forget, and neither could the people who had witnessed it. In the end, it wasn't just about what happened that night. It was about the things we never see, the cracks in the system, the gaps in security, the intruders who slip through unnoticed, waiting for the right moment to strike.
Like, subscribe and comment.